There is a peculiar irony in our age. The more we chase pleasure, the more we become discontent. In the sacred name of happiness, we have built civilizations designed to numb pain, distract thought, and sedate the soul. The modern man believes he is free because he can choose his distractions, but he is no more liberated than a laboratory animal trained to press a button for sugar water. The pursuit of pleasure has not refined us, it has reduced us. Not elevated us, it has emptied us. It has turned consciousness into a battleground where shallow gratification defeats deep reflection. This is the tyranny of amusement, the dictatorship of dopamine. It does not demand our obedience through violence, but through comfort. The state no longer needs to censor books if the people prefer screens. It no longer needs to suppress truth if the truth is drowned in a sea of entertainment. Huxley foresaw this. He did not predict a boot stamping on the human face, but a society so drugged by pleasure that it no longer cared about the soul. This is not fiction, this is now. We have confused stimulation for meaning. A man scrolls through his feeds, consumes his sugar, his sex, his spectacle, and believes he is living. But inside he is dying, a quiet, numbing death of the mind. For the more he consumes, the less he creates. The more he indulges, the less he feels. Pleasure, when made the god of life, devours the very essence it promises to nourish. It is no longer a companion to meaning, but a replacement for it. The real tragedy is not that pleasure exists. It is that we no longer know how to suffer. We fear discomfort as if it were a sin. But discomfort is where truth often lives, growth lives, transcendence lives. The man who cannot suffer cannot evolve. He cannot awaken to the depth of his own being. He remains shallow, fragile, addicted to ease, incapable of confronting the dark forests of his mind, and a society of such men is easily controlled, not through force but through gratification. So the question is no longer whether pleasure is bad. It is whether we are using it to escape ourselves. For the man who never faces boredom never meets the deeper self. The one who flees pain flees the wisdom it contains. If we are to survive this spiritual sedation, we must learn to distinguish between freedom and indulgence, between joy and escape. And we must remember, pleasure is meant to serve life, not replace it. The modern individual is not ruled by chains or kings, but by the soft tyranny of pleasure. This pleasure does not scream, it whispers. It seduces rather than coerces. It assures us that we are free while quietly taking from us the very faculties that allow for genuine liberation, attention, reflection, and the capacity for stillness. Pleasure has become a sedative, a subtle chemical lullaby administered through our devices, our food, our media, our digital rituals. It is not that we are forbidden to think, it is that we are too entertained to bother. In the age of constant stimulation, boredom becomes unbearable, and silence feels suffocating. The mind, once capable of wandering through the vast landscapes of imagination and thought, is now trapped in the fluorescent prison of endless gratification. This sedation is dangerous not because it feels wrong, but because it feels good. The ancient dangers of life were loud: war, famine, disease. The new danger is silent. It arrives in the form of comfort, in the allure of frictionless experience, in the promise of never having to confront discomfort again. It teaches us to seek the path of least resistance, not only in the outer world but in our inner lives as well. And so, we numb the ache of meaninglessness not by confronting it, but by opening another app, clicking another link, consuming another bite of sensory relief. In this way, pleasure transforms into anesthesia, numbing us not only to pain but to reality itself. This is not to say pleasure has no place. It is part of the human condition, a natural response to beauty, intimacy, laughter. But when it becomes the central aim, when the pursuit of comfort replaces the pursuit of truth, it begins to hollow out the soul. The ancient Greeks knew this. Epicurus spoke of pleasure, yes, but always in harmony with reason. Today, however, we have divorced pleasure from wisdom. We no longer ask, is this good for the soul, but only, does this feel good now? The result is a society bloated with stimulation but starved of substance. The tragedy of a pleasure-sedated society is that it forgets how to feel deeply. True feeling requires vulnerability, risk, and sometimes even pain. But when all that is uncomfortable is avoided, we become spiritually shallow, incapable of wonder, incapable of awe, incapable of transformation. In shielding ourselves from the harshness of life, we inadvertently shield ourselves from its richness as well. We become surface dwellers, trading depth for immediacy, authenticity for approval, presence for distraction. And so, the man lulled by comfort slowly ceases to be a man in the fullest sense. He becomes a spectator of life rather than its participant. He mistakes sedation for serenity. He believes he is happy, but he has never truly confronted himself. In the pursuit of pleasure, he has become estranged from his own soul, and by the time he realizes it, the silence within him is no longer peace, but the quiet hum of a life never truly lived. The illusion of freedom in the modern age is perhaps the most dangerous deception we face. It wears the mask of choice, of abundance, of access. You may scroll endlessly, watch anything, order anything, say anything, but are you really free? Or have you become a slave to the mechanisms that offer you these choices? In a world where every impulse can be instantly gratified, freedom is no longer about liberation of the mind, but the indulgence of the senses. We mistake our ability to consume for autonomy, unaware that true freedom lies not in the breadth of options, but in the depth of consciousness. The man who believes he is free because he can binge on entertainment, gorge on food, or chase any fleeting desire is already lost. He does not realize that he is moving within a carefully curated playground, designed not to empower him, but to keep him docile. Pleasure has become the leash, and the leash is soft enough that it feels like liberty. You are not being forced into obedience. You are being seduced into it. No longer must tyrants censor speech or burn books. They only need to flood your senses until you forget how to think for yourself. Your prison is not a dungeon. It is a palace of mirrors, reflecting only what you want to see, never what is real. This illusion extends even deeper. The modern world promotes a form of individualism that praises personal desire above collective wisdom. You are told, follow your bliss, do what makes you happy, pursue your dreams without pause. But if your dreams are implanted by algorithms, by marketing, by trends that shape your preferences without your consent, then whose dreams are you living? The man who mistakes impulse for identity is not free. He is programmed. He is told he is unique, yet lives a life indistinguishable from millions who consume the same content, wear the same brands, echo the same opinions. This is not individuality. This is conformity dressed as freedom. True freedom is frightening. It requires solitude. It demands the death of illusion. It calls for resistance, not against authority, but against your own compulsion to submit to comfort. To be free, you must learn to say no, not only to others but to yourself. No to distraction, no to ease, no to the endless stream of synthetic pleasures that rob you of agency and soul. Because freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the ability to master what you want. The man who cannot command his desires will always be ruled by them, and he will mistake the cage of pleasure for the sky of liberty. So ask yourself, are you truly free, or are you merely well entertained? Do your choices come from your soul, or have they been chosen for you? Until you confront the machinery behind your pleasure, until you tear away the veil of false autonomy, you will never know what it means to walk as a sovereign being in a world that thrives on keeping you asleep. Pleasure, when consumed in excess, becomes not a source of joy but a slow eroder of discipline. It is not the intensity of pleasure that destroys. It is its constancy. The man who allows himself to be swayed by every soft urge, every sweet comfort, soon finds that he is no longer the author of his actions but their captive. He wakes up each morning not with direction but with craving. He cannot sit in silence. He cannot resist the pull of the easy choice. He begins to build his life not around principles but around rewards. And with each indulgence, his capacity for self-mastery weakens. He does not even feel it at first, for the decline is gentle. But one day he looks in the mirror and sees a stranger, soft where he was once strong, scattered where he was once focused. Discipline does not die in battle, it dies in surrender. In saying yes when he should have said no, in postponing effort for another moment of rest, in trading long-term growth for short-term comfort. But what is most tragic is that modern society celebrates this erosion. It calls laziness self-care. It calls indulgence self-love. It wraps apathy in the language of liberation. And so, the man who weakens thinks he is growing. He mistakes retreat for peace and stagnation for healing. No force opposes him, because the system does not need to oppose him. It only needs to convince him that there is no need to resist. In the philosophy of Huxley, this is the perfect form of control. No force, no threat, only pleasure. A man distracted does not rebel. A man sedated does not strive. He believes he is choosing his life, while every choice is guided by an unseen hand, convenience, comfort, and the gentle addiction to ease. To live this way is not to be alive, but to drift, weightless and passive, in a current too soothing to escape. But all rivers of pleasure, if left unchecked, flow toward decay. True discipline is forged in resistance. It is in saying no to what is easy so you can say yes to what is meaningful. It is not glamorous, it is not exciting, but it is the source of real power. The disciplined man stands apart, not because he is superior, but because he is awake. He does not fear boredom, he meets it. He does not seek comfort, he endures discomfort in pursuit of something higher. He is not a slave to his hungers, he uses them as fuel. He may live without applause, but his soul grows heavy with purpose. If you feel weak, it is not because you lack strength. It is because you have fed the wrong instinct too long. Turn away from the warm fog of indulgence. Embrace the cold, hard clarity of effort. Choose what is difficult. Resist what is excessive, because the man who reclaims discipline reclaims himself. And in a world that worships the easy, to be disciplined is to be free. Pleasure, when endlessly pursued, shrinks the capacity for meaning. In the pursuit of more, the soul receives less. What begins as a small indulgence, harmless, perhaps even deserved, can evolve into a way of life built not around depth, but around distraction. The modern man is taught to chase what feels good, and in doing so, he forgets to ask what is good. He fills his days with stimulation, but his nights remain hollow. The more he consumes, the less he contemplates. And without contemplation, without the slow and painful digestion of experience, he loses the ability to assign value to anything at all. The danger lies not in pleasure itself, but in its inflation. The more we pursue pleasure as the central aim of life, the more we dilute our sensitivity to it. What once thrilled us now barely stirs us. What once satisfied becomes boring, and so we escalate. Louder noise, brighter colors, more shocking content, more extreme experiences, but this arms race of sensation leads only to numbness. In trying to feel more, we end up feeling nothing. Meaning is quiet, it arrives slowly, it demands patience, but in a life addicted to instant gratification, there is no space for meaning to enter. The soil has been paved over by the asphalt of urgency. Huxley saw this with terrifying clarity. He envisioned a society not broken by pain, but by comfort, a world where people were so satiated by pleasures that they no longer sought truth, and when truth is no longer valued, meaning withers. What are you, if not a seeker of meaning? Are you content to be just a consumer, to exist as a machine for converting sensation into distraction? The pleasure-addicted life is ultimately a life devoid of substance, for it is always escaping the present in pursuit of the next thrill. It cannot rest because rest feels empty. It cannot pause because stillness feels like death, yet it is precisely in stillness that meaning speaks. In the silence between cravings, we find our true hunger not for more pleasure, but for purpose. And purpose is not always pleasurable. It is often painful. It calls for sacrifice, responsibility, restraint. But from it grows a richness that no entertainment can match. To sit with suffering and find something noble in it. That is meaning. To give yourself not to your desires but to your ideals. That is meaning. It will not be easy, but it will be real. You must choose to be entertained or to be transformed. To pursue the endless shallow pleasures that keep you distracted, or to dive into the difficult, uncomfortable terrain of meaning. One path will soothe you, the other will stretch you, and in that stretch, in that tension between who you are and who you are meant to become, lies everything. Meaning does not arrive through ease. It arrives through resistance, through reflection, through standing still while the world rushes past. Let others chase pleasure. You must chase something more. Pleasure, when used as an escape, becomes a prison dressed in silk. Many people do not seek pleasure for joy's sake. They seek it as a shield against themselves. They are not chasing happiness. They are fleeing from anxiety, boredom, shame, meaninglessness, and so they turn to the easiest solution, distraction. They reach for the screen, the bottle, the attention, the validation, not to celebrate life, but to forget it. This is the tragic paradox. The more they run from their inner unrest, the more enslaved they become by it. The pleasures they use to silence their pain only deepen the void. Aldous Huxley understood this better than most. He saw that the modern individual, stripped of spiritual depth and community, would retreat into stimulation as a coping mechanism. But instead of healing, this indulgence would corrode the psyche, because nothing truly disappears. What is suppressed festers. The fears we ignore become addictions. The questions we avoid become distractions. The wounds we deny become compulsions. In a society obsessed with feeling good, the greatest sin is to feel discomfort. But it is precisely discomfort that signals the need for transformation. When we mute that signal with pleasure, we delay growth, and the cost of that delay is our psychological integrity. Pleasure, then, becomes anesthesia. It numbs. But the pain doesn't go away. It just slips beneath the surface, influencing our choices, shaping our relationships, and distorting our view of the world. We start confusing relief with peace, sedation with clarity. We become addicted to the very things that are keeping us sick, and because these things are socially accepted, even celebrated, we mistake conformity for wellness. But deep down, the psyche knows. It remembers the unresolved. It remembers the truth. To reverse this, one must stop running. One must sit in the discomfort, confront the shadow, and feel what one has tried so hard not to feel. This is not weakness. It is the foundation of psychological strength. True healing does not come from more pleasure. It comes from honesty, from facing the inner storm without reaching for the umbrella of escape, from daring to ask, what am I avoiding? What am I afraid to feel? It is a terrifying question, but it is also the doorway to freedom, because once we stop using pleasure to hide, we can begin to use it properly, to celebrate, to rest, to enrich life, not to flee from it. Pleasure has its place, but it must never become a replacement for introspection. Let it be the dessert, not the meal. Let it follow meaning, not replace it. The pursuit of pleasure must be conscious, or it will become compulsive. You must choose whether pleasure will be your medicine or your poison. And this choice is not made once, but daily. In each craving, in each impulse, in each moment of inner silence, you are either running or returning. Running into the arms of distraction, or returning to the truth of your inner self. Choose wisely. When society elevates pleasure to a moral ideal, it condemns struggle as failure. But in doing so, it amputates the very limb that allows us to climb. The modern world has become allergic to pain, discomfort, and anything that requires delay or endurance. In this cultural shift, struggle is no longer seen as part of the process of growth. It is seen as a flaw, a defect to be corrected. We prescribe pills for every ache, curate our lives to eliminate uncertainty, and surround ourselves with comforts so persistent that they become cages. But Huxley warned us, when struggle disappears, so too does meaning. To become fully human is to suffer with purpose, to wrestle with the chaos within and forge something higher from it. Pleasure cannot do this. Pleasure is passive. It is given, consumed, and forgotten. Struggle is active. It demands engagement, courage, choice. Yet our institutions and technologies aim to eliminate it entirely. Education becomes entertainment. Work is gamified. Even relationships are optimized for ease. But a life without resistance is a life without character. As Carl Jung might suggest, the self, the true, whole individual, emerges only through the confrontation with hardship, through the tension between what is and what could be. By anesthetizing this process, we do not free ourselves, we cripple ourselves, we become emotionally fragile, spiritually undernourished, intellectually dull, because what shapes us is not what we avoid, but what we endure. A man who avoids all pain will never know his own strength. He may feel good, but he will be hollow. He will not trust himself in crisis. He will not develop depth, patience, or clarity. These are born only in fire. The individual who is willing to suffer, who does not run from the dark night of the soul, becomes someone terrifyingly alive, someone with substance, someone unshakable. The pursuit of a painless life, therefore, is not a noble aspiration. It is a psychological retreat. It replaces the noble suffering of becoming with the shallow sedation of consuming. But nothing worthwhile comes without a cost. Not wisdom, not love, not mastery, not peace. These require sacrifice. They demand we stay when it would be easier to escape. They ask for presence when distraction is one click away. In the rejection of struggle, we reject the very alchemy that turns chaos into order. So you must ask yourself, do you want to feel good, or do you want to be real? Because you cannot be both. The pursuit of endless pleasure will ask you to deny the parts of you that are still becoming, still raw, still unfinished. But those parts, those trembling, flawed, hurting parts are sacred. They are the soil of your transformation. If you run from them, you will never become who you are meant to be. Choose struggle, not because it is heroic, but because it is human. Let it purify you. Let it carve you into someone who can endure. In a world of shallow pleasures, the one who can suffer well becomes not only free, but powerful. When the pursuit of pleasure becomes the dominant compass of a life, the individual loses all sense of interiority. He no longer hears the quiet voice of the soul, the subtle murmurings of conscience, the faint echoes of meaning. Instead, he becomes governed by the roar of appetite. Each desire screams to be fulfilled, and he, like Pavlov's dog, salivates at every stimulus. There is no reflection, only reaction, no discernment, only indulgence. In this state, man does not live. He consumes. He becomes a receptacle for sensations, a puppet pulled by cravings that are not truly his own. This is precisely what Aldous Huxley foresaw in Brave New World, a society in which pleasure is weaponized not to liberate but to pacify. In such a world, people are not controlled through pain or violence, but through their addiction to comfort. The individual who is always happy becomes incapable of rebellion, incapable of thinking critically, incapable of seeking truth. Why question the world when it gives you constant pleasure? Why seek depth when the surface glitters so seductively? Why endure the ache of self-discovery when dopamine is just a button away? The answer is simple, because truth cannot be found in pleasure alone. In fact, pleasure, when unchecked, drowns truth. It buries it beneath layers of noise and distraction. It replaces inner authority with outer seduction. The man who once looked inward for direction now turns outward for validation. He loses himself, not because the self is weak, but because the self has been silenced by the scream of endless gratification. The stronger the urge for pleasure, the weaker the soul becomes, until eventually he no longer remembers what it means to be guided by something higher. This is the true danger of pleasure, not that it feels good, but that it makes us forget what matters. It distorts the scale of value. Deep bonds are replaced by shallow encounters. Mastery is abandoned for convenience. Solitude is feared, silence avoided. Everything becomes about stimulation, never stillness. But the psyche needs stillness. The soul needs silence. It needs emptiness from which true insight can arise. Pleasure fills the void, but it does not nourish. It distracts from the hunger, but it does not feed. To reclaim yourself, you must reclaim your attention. You must pull it away from the seductive chaos of the world and bring it back to the quiet sanctuary of the inner life. This will be uncomfortable at first. You will hear the emptiness you've been avoiding. You will feel the pain you've been numbing. But in that space, you will also find something astonishing: clarity, direction, meaning, and above all, autonomy. Because only the one who can resist pleasure is free. Only the one who can endure silence can hear truth. Only the one who can go without is truly whole. In a world drunk on distraction, to walk away from pleasure is not a denial. It is a revolution. And it begins not with a scream, but with a pause, a breath, a choice to feel everything, and to be fully alive.